Your boundaries don't have to make sense to anybody but you. And especially if you have empathetic and maybe people pleasing tendencies, it can be really hard to set boundaries. In general, it's hard to set boundaries because you're being vulnerable and you're expressing, this is what I need. And if you're not willing to meet this bar, then I'm ready to leave. And it can be really scary. And a lot of times we will be met with resistance when we set boundaries because the other person on the other end may not be willing to take responsibility, and they can try to dismiss your boundary or dismiss you in order to still have access to you and not have to live up to that bar that you're sitting. For example, I know a lot of situations where when you set a boundary, someone can say like, oh, you're asking for too much, or you're just being insecure, or that's ridiculous. And someone's dismissal of your boundary when you're coming from a vulnerable place of being already probably worried about setting this boundary can have you questioning like, oh, are they right? Like, am I asking for too much? And this level of gaslighting and dismissal can create a lot of internal tension because at this time you've built up the courage and the strength to set your boundary, and then now you're getting met with resistance, and now you're second guessing yourself like, oh, am I asking for too much? Maybe you'll then turn to friends or family members, tell them the situation and be like, I'm right? Or is this too much or is this too little? And I think that's where it gets dangerous because every single person in this life is going to have a different level and bar of what they are okay with. Yes, I know that like on TikTok and in society, people have these preconceptions of what they believe is like the bare minimum and what they believe is like princess treatment and what people perceive as a basic level of respect. But the reality is that it doesn't matter what society decides is normal or right or enough. It only matters what you believe, because when you start consulting other people to say, oh, is this boundary too tough? Or like, does this make sense? You're lacking your self-trust and you're not any longer respecting your own personal needs. Once you start looping other people into that conversation, yes, it's great that you have a support system and that you can speak out with them, but your boundaries are not going to be the same as your friends, not going to be the same as your mom's. It's going to be completely different. So taking other people's perceptions and their boundaries and then using it to craft your boundary isn't necessarily right. And someone's inability to meet your boundary doesn't mean that it's not right either, because everyone has a different level of action that they're willing to take. And I find a lot of times in relationships when people set boundaries, the other person can perceive it as control and may dismiss you and try to put you down so that you weaken your boundary and feel a lack of self-confidence in your ability to stand firm in it. And this can be really dangerous because this causes people to stay in relationships way too long and also causes you to accept less than you deserve, even though in the back of your mind you knew and you tried to express like, this is what I need, and you're not getting met with it. And the hard part is that a lot of times when people are in these kinds of relationships and they set these boundaries, they believe like, oh, but I really care for this person, or I really love this person, so maybe I'll just lower my boundary a little bit. But at the end of the day, once you do that once, the other person knows then, oh, your boundaries aren't firm. I can continue to push back every time this person tells me this is important to me. I can push back and cause them to lose self-trust and instead cause them to depend on me more. And it creates a really dangerous codependency and also causes the person who's trying to express the boundaries to lose self-trust, because every time you tried to be brave and stand up for yourself, you've been met with resistance and dismissal. So just because someone else dismisses your boundary doesn't mean it is not valid and worthy and completely aligned for you. And if someone else is unable to meet you there, that's a reflection of who they are and their desire to not respect you, and their perception is that they value their freedom more than their respect for you. So I know that a lot of people will go to friends and family members, tell them situations, consult them, and be like, am I asking for too much? Am I doing this? And while it's great to have a sounding board to express like whether certain past traumas are trickling into this relationship and maybe certain boundaries that you're trying to express are remnants of past traumas that you haven't processed. But at the end of the day, if you are feeling really, really sure that this is something that you need in a relationship and the other person is not willing to give it to you, then the hard truth is that they may not be the right one for you, because someone who really loves and respects you will be able to meet you at your boundaries, will be able to meet you where you are and tell you that like, because it matters to you, it matters to them too.